Oh boy, the floor is mine. I'd like to give it back. You can hold on to it. Um, Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here wherever you are. It's um, it feels really good to share this time with all of you, and I'd like to start by offering what do we call it? Maybe a lighthearted or not too serious apology for being away for a little while. I think I've been absent for about a month. Um, some people have been away up here at Jikoji. That's given me more responsibility. Also, some family came to visit. And while that was nice, it kind of pulls me in different directions. So it's been hard to be here to sit with all of you, to practice and carry on the teachings in this way. And I feel a little bad about that, but not too bad. This is just a lighthearted or maybe not so serious apology. No, whatever this is, the whipping my back with some kind of painful device. In any case, um, I am still a white man in his late 30s, though not for much longer. I was reminded that I'll turn 40 at the beginning of next year. Um, we'll just see what happens then. Um, my head is still shaved, though not bald. And because Oshin and I are so similar in appearance, I decided to get different glasses. So instead of clear rimmed, kind of square framed glasses, I've got gold wire rimmed glasses that are, I like to call them a grandpa style, which means they're really big lenses, like maybe a grandma or grandpa would wear. And of course, there are still many piercings in my ears and on my nose. And just below this head of mine is a black okesa, and underneath that, a black koromo, and underneath that, a blue kimono, and underneath that, a white juban, which is a kind of undershirt. And that's the costume I'm wearing today. And I'll say just one more thing about this kind of different or interesting background behind me. Um, in the small meditation hall here at Jikoji, um, one of our residents has hung a very large piece of calligraphy. I would guess it's about 15 feet long and maybe 5 or 6 feet tall. And on the whole of it, you can see the entire history of Zen. Um, and behind me, there's a quote from Vasubandhu, and there's a smaller quote from Bodhidharma. And off of I guess this is my left shoulder, there's Kobun's take on the final line of the Heart Sutra, which I'll talk a little bit about today. And it reads, falling apart, everything everywhere falling apart, nothing to do. Kind of fitting, I suppose. So today, I want to continue a series that I decided to offer starting in January of this year a series of talks inspired by Kobun Chino Otagawa's talks on the Heart Sutra. And as some of you might remember, Kobun is the root teacher for the Phoenix Cloud lineage. This is a family of sanghas around the world that have a specific and direct connection to this priest that came from Japan to America, shared the teachings with us, helped found several temples both in the States and then eventually in Europe. And each Sangha has some kind of commitment to practicing and sharing his particular style and teachings with others. And each one does that in their own way, including us here at No Barriers Zen. And that supports transmission of his style and teachings for future generations. Quite literally, we're keeping this alive for other people to experience and explore if they so choose. And the Heart Sutra, the focus of these particular talks, is a teaching significant across Buddhist lineages, schools, and traditions that trace a specific and direct connection to Shakyamuni Buddha, right? Sometimes we say our Buddha, the historical Buddha. And we can describe the sutra's main insight as the emptiness or the through and through interconnectedness of all things. Everything that exists in this intimately interconnected way. So, Kobun is talking about that and many other things. And I am talking about Kobun's talking about that in my own way. And all of this is very particular, but it's somehow all part of the same way. It's this magical instance of both and that shows up everywhere in our practice. And from another point of view, Kobun's words serve as a mirror. They're reflecting me to myself, showing me what's showing up in this body, heart, mind. And it offers a kind of structure for me to investigate what's appearing in the mirror. And that's a never-ending effort that all of us can take part in. So 3 talks in, this talk being the third talk, I'm starting to see maybe an outline of what the focus of this series is. And unsurprisingly, it's relationships. I've heard more in the past couple of years than at any point in practice or in the almost 40 years that I've been alive that everything is about relationships. Everything. Um, so in the first talk, I spoke about, again, the Heart Sutra's emphasis on this through and through interconnection of all things. One of the Buddha's preferred expressions for this insight is because this arises, that arises. And because this ceases, that ceases. And Thich Nhat Hanh, the wonderful Vietnamese Buddhist monk and peace activist, felt it important to add to the Buddha's words, which is a bold move, by the way. But if anybody could do it, I feel like he could. Um, because this is like this, that is like that. And in March, I spoke about sincerity, which I tentatively understand as when the courageous, vulnerable, and awakened heart is in intimate connection with its life, whether present in simple presence or demonstrated through thoughts, speech, and deeds. And here, I want to move again from what you might call something primarily philosophical and the awakened heart's connection to the whole world, and talk a little bit about the heart's connection to other hearts, other whole human beings, really, and also to itself, to the whole human being that it's also a part of. And I want to do this um, by way of some things that Kobun has to say about how we can relate to a sutra, such as the Heart Sutra. So let's see what happens. Um, whether you're new to Zen, or you've been around a little while, it's a certainty that you've come across a word or a phrase that prompted your head to turn, maybe an eyebrow to raise, or a puzzled expression to appear on your face or throughout your body. Um, in the Heart Sutra, for example, we meet these expressions. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form, and form is no other than emptiness, and emptiness is no other than form. What? What does this mean? Uh, and to give you another example, Dogen Zenji, our 13th century Japanese ancestor, and the founder, excuse me, of Soto Zen, when offering instructions for seated meditation, Zazen, which we've just spent part of the morning doing together, says, let body and mind drop off. What? Uh, what does this mean? Who knows? Um, in a talk titled On Chanting, Kobun describes one way, I think, that we can relate to this what when it appears. So here's what Kobun has to say. We often try to understand what is the meaning of the sutra, this text in front of us that has some familiar words and some that are mysterious. We want to understand what the sutra is teaching us, to interpret what the words mean, how the words are asking us to understand their meaning. There's a kind of conversation happening between the words on the page and us, and we're not quite sure how to engage in that conversation. When we study the sutra, we often forget the space which holds the words. So naturally, in communicating with each word, we completely lose ourselves in each word of the sutra, and the sutra becomes a dictionary. The experience described here is similar to an old, almost adage about a forest a tree in a forest and how the focus of our attention affects our relationship to each and both together. If I'm up on a ridge, let's say, and focus on the forest, I notice the shape made by the many trees, especially the arrangement of their points or tops. There's an interesting line I might be able to trace across the landscape. I can see where a tree line meets the sky on the horizon. I may observe the way a large shape is carved by a river that runs through the forest, and so on. I've got this big view in which I can take in a big picture of what's in front of me. What I miss, though, when I'm standing on the ridge, engaging with this particular view before me, are the details of any one tree. If I'm down in the forest, however, and I focus on a particular tree, I don't miss those details. The texture of the tree's bark, whether it's rough or smooth. A nest made by several birds up in a branch just above me. An observable knot kind of jutting out right towards my nose. Or roots that peek up through the soil, acting all mischievous, trying to trip me as I'm on my hike. I'm just kidding. The tree's not really trying to trip me. It's just living its life, and I don't want to admit that I'm clumsy. The color and shape of the leaves. But when I'm down in the forest and I'm right up against this tree, noting all the different features that are available to my sense organs, I don't see the forest as a whole. All those aspects I shared about a moment ago when I'm standing up on some ridge looking out over the forest. All those aspects are quite literally over my head. And there are many other perspectives here. Although presented as a binary, the possible perspectives are infinite in variety. Um, it's like a palace. It's like a jewel, as Dogen would say. So here, the sutra is the whole forest. The characters, sounds, words are the individual trees. And the literary or philosophical or religious features of the words are features of a specific tree. And then there is the space that holds all of this. It's not full, but it's not quite empty either. And I'll say a little bit more about that later. Um, in an effort to comprehend the meaning of the word emptiness and its significance in this text, I can forget about the whole sutra itself, what it is I ultimately want to understand, and that for the sake of which I started to focus on this puzzling, frustrating, difficult, overly mysterious word in the first place. And I wonder if you can anticipate the analogy between how we can relate to a sutra where there is confusion or question or an absence of understanding. We very often forget the space which holds the characters, and the sutra becomes a dictionary. and how we can relate to another whole person when there is the same. The Buddha's first teaching is recorded in, and I'm going to preemptively apologize to the interpreter. Here's, I think, a 20 or 25 character word coming your way. In the Dhamma Kakappavatthana Sutta, there it is, or the setting in motion, the wheel of the Dharma Sutra. Supposedly, this text that you can find and read online if you wish. It's maybe 3 or 4 standard book length pages, has the Buddha's first teaching. And in that sutra, the Buddha presents the first truth for the one who would be noble in this way. He says, "Now, monks, this is the noble truth of suffering. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering. Union with what is displeasing is suffering. Separation from what is pleasing is suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are suffering." He could just as well, maybe even better, have said, in brief, our relationships are suffering. For in relationships, we are united with what is displeasing, sometimes, separated from what is pleasing, sometimes, and we do not receive what we want in or from that relationship, sometimes. Perhaps the first appears as critical speech. I don't know, your friend or partner comes home and you still haven't done the dishes, or maybe you didn't get your laundry out of the dryer, or you didn't pick up the shared living space, and this is like the 9th time they've asked you to do it. And now there's going to be some choice words for you. You don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. The second, um, you could find in the fading of a puppy love phase in a relationship. Some of you might know this. You go out to dinner for the first 3 months, 6 months, year of the relationship, and you're sitting across from one another, and all you can say for the whole meal is, "You're so cute. No, you're so cute. No, you're so cute." And everybody around you finds this disgusting, but so it goes. And eventually that fades, right? At some point into your relationship, you go out to dinner and you sit across from the table and you look at the menu and say, "So you're gonna have the lasagna again?" No more affectionate baby talk. Whoops. Um, and the third can appear as the absence of encouragement when it feels as though it is most needed. You had a tough day at work or a tough weekend visiting family, or maybe you just got cut off on the drive home or whatever it is. And you really just want someone to show up and say, "I'm sorry. I still love you and I understand." And instead, they don't offer that. And you can substitute these examples for your own. if you wish. I'm sure each of us has many. So, when any of these experiences show up in a particular way, I can, the all important word here, grasp it and even cling to it without pause or reflection, but with a full bodied reaction. That particular action or bit of speech or absence of the action and bit of speech becomes the eyebrow raising character or sound or word in the sutra. It becomes the single tree that is my focus in the forest. And the grasping and the clinging increases in intensity in proportion to the pain and suffering that I feel. The greater the perceived harm, the quicker the grasp and the tighter the grip. It's all I can focus on. And when in my hands, this disruptive event, whatever it is, gets pulled apart, its components are analyzed by themselves and in relation to each other, and more often than not, in relation to things that are not present. Stories abound, some born from conjectures about this person's childhood, while others center on recent events. I lean into my observations, but I cast to one side any awareness that the range of my observations doesn't amount to even a hair's breadth. I forget that stories are fictions, and the truth doesn't tell one, as the poet William Bronk writes. I lose sight of the whole person with whom I am in relationship, and from whom came forth a proximate cause of my present suffering. A cause, not the cause, because it's not all about them. It's not all about me. It's about the relationship and many, many, many things I can't see and that I just don't know. But I think nothing of this singular direction of attention, save somehow that if I can hold on to this thing and I can pull it apart and I can understand it, it will end the suffering I experience. And it doesn't. um, if anything, it seems to make the suffering worse. Um, but I don't know about you. I'm stubborn and I'm kind of a slow learner. Um, so I just keep going, right? Um, until some space opens up and I can relate to this fixation in a different way. Again, here's this all important word can. And that happens when the roles are reversed. When it's my speech or my action that serves as a cause of another person's suffering. We're all different, all individual flakes of snow that fall silently on a winter's day. And at the same time, we are not entirely different, such that any and all points of comparison or likeness disappear. When I contribute to another's suffering and am subsequently reduced to the size of a single tree or a head tilting phrase, I feel directly how painful that is. I'm more than what I just said to you or what I didn't do. So why is this all you see? And all the more so do I feel that pain when the harmed person's reaction or response is further harm in my direction. And at times it can feel like being stabbed with a poker straight from the fire. And I'm setting aside the question of justification here. It's just, this is just what shows up sometimes in my relationship. And that which shows up is really important to me because that's what my life is at that time. And I need to meet that. Their focus is an action or a bit of speech that, in one sense, is gone. It happened yesterday, or 2 weeks ago, or a year ago. It's vanished from the timeless present that we all occupy right now. But in another sense, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's continually reified through other causes and conditions living on in their body, heart, and mind. In just the same way that my stubborn insistence on focusing and pulling apart that action when it happens to me keeps it alive and well right here. With these two perspectives before us, what a situation looks like for me in relation to somebody else, and then turning it around, what it looks like for somebody else in relationship to me, an opportunity presents itself. As one Chinese ancestor puts it, here we can pivot, step outside of our habitual ego or self-centered orientation towards all things and see with Dharma eyes. Oh, I might exclaim, this is what I have been doing to this person and many other people all this time. And the same is happening to me now. But with this awareness before me, I make a commitment to never doing it to them or anyone else ever again. I don't just see it from my own point of view anymore. I see it from the point of view of others with whom I'm in relationship. It doesn't feel good to not be seen as a whole person, but I don't have to see others in that way when I have this moment of awakening. Moreover, I said a moment ago, trying to be Thich Nhat Hanh, that the Buddha could have said something better, that in brief, relationships are suffering in place of the five aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. But that's not quite right, actually. I should learn to step back and let the Buddha's words be the Buddha's words. Because his direction to the five aggregates, these five categories of basic person parts, our physical form, the feelings that arise, the perceptions that we have, the beliefs, thoughts, desires, mental formations, judgments, comparisons that float around through this being, and the awareness of all of it, these are the five categories, is important. When I've spent time with them, coming to understand them in different and fresh ways and their relations, it becomes clear to me that we as human beings are just disposed to experience suffering because of how we're made or how we came to be. We came to be in such a way not to suffer. There's no predestination for that, but to be able to suffer. It's just an accident of the evolutionary process by which this organism showed up in this way. The potential to experience suffering is just part of what it is to be human. It's not the only part, but it's a pretty significant part. And I can lose sight of that with someone with whom I am in relationship when I'm harmed by them. And they can lose sight of that with me, whom they are in relationship when I harm them. In both cases, our visions can become narrow, our perspectives small. Recognition of this universal capacity for suffering, born from nothing other than how each one of us is constituted, exquisitely different, but simultaneously the same, can reinforce this personal insight that arises from studying someone else in relation to me and studying myself in relation to someone else that I spoke about just a moment ago. These three complementary perspectives encourage a different way of relating to everyone and everything with which we are in relationship, whether a sutra or a forest or a person. And it seems to me that Coben agrees. So the sentence that follows Coben's observation that we very often forget the space which holds the characters, and we completely lose ourselves in each word of the sutra, and the sutra becomes a dictionary, reads this. Instead, we can see the space between the words, that not full but not empty space, as an opportunity to complete the situation. Complete the situation. What does that mean? In a way, the situation is already complete. I am through and through interconnected with all things. The Heart Sutra, every mouse and turkey at Jikoji, including this one wild turkey that likes to stand on the handrail near the stairs outside my room every morning, and the ungraspable number of blades of tall grass up on the ridge. And yet, I must needs be aware of that interconnection. The space between the characters, the sounds and words, the trees, the thoughts, speech, and deeds of the whole people with whom I am in relationship is where I am. In all places, I am with whole beings, and each one is a part of me. We are different, but not separate. We are one, but not the same. As I got to this point in the talk, it became difficult for me to try to express this feeling that I want to share with you. So I went looking for some other words of Coben's. that might do it for me. And here's what I found. You experience this importance of the space in the relationships where you can complete the situation after trusting them, discovering and becoming aware of the through and through interconnection with this individual, and then recovering independence. It goes like, you are actually myself. You say to anything, even an abstract thing, like a thought or a judgment. You say, you are nothing but myself, but I am not you. I am not yourself. And the same words you hear from another person about yourself. Here's that shift in the perspective where the roles are reversed. The other person says, oh, you are myself, but you are not myself. Is that so? Yes, it is so. So there's complete identity, and what was your original self both drop off. There's no conversation necessary. And what remains is who you are. That is the person, the whole person that you are. And when I got to this point, I thought I knew what I wanted to say to close this talk. I thought it would be about a tendency to get focused in particular ways on particular things and lose sight of big pictures, whole people, vast landscapes. And that I would want to tell you, think big or something like that. But what ended up happening is a familiar thing to any of us who have ever worked on a project. We get to the end and we realize where we thought we were going and what we wanted to say or express was not at all what it was when we started. And so as I wrap up this maybe too long of a talk, um, what I want to say here, the most important thing isn't any one of these perspectives that I've talked about. It's don't get stuck. You will. um, just as sure as there will be suffering in your life, you will get stuck in any one or more of these perspectives at times. But um, the most important thing and what I want to share with you this morning is just don't get stuck. Keep moving. And thank you.